Yes, you read that right. 91% of my electricity in April was free. Hey, and welcome to the April 2022 solar performance update. We've had loads of new subscribers this month and loads of positive feedback. So thank you for kind of listening. Thank you for finding it interesting, and thank you for engaging. We're now 6 months into this solar project, and so I've developed a whole load of new metrics to show you. So let's get right into it. First of all, the disclaimer, so as usual, I'm not a qualified person in any of the things I'm talking about. I'm just sharing my opinions with you for educational and informational purposes only. If you are considering getting solar or any of the other stuff I talk about, please make sure you get the relevant qualified advice first. In terms of referral links, I've got the same Octopus Energy link. If you want to join them, then using this link will get both you and me £50 off our next bill. I have also received from Enphase a £100 Amazon voucher referral link. In order to get that, I need your name, email, mobile, and then I recommend you to them. And then if you get an Enphase system installed, we'll both receive vouchers. Okay, so if you're interested, feel free to use the Octopus link or reach out to me if you want me to recommend you to Enphase. Right, first of all, as I mentioned last month, in April, we have switched from the price cap tariff that we were on with British Gas to the new price cap tariff from the 1st of April onwards. And on top of that, we then switched from British Gas to Octopus Energy for both our gas and electricity. And the switch happened on the 8th of April. So what I thought I'd do is start on this slide with a quick update on our tariffs so you can see how the price has evolved and changed. So while I was building this slide, I thought I would just go back as far as I've got data for and show you how the price has grown over the last 2 years. So I moved to British Gas in July 2020, and at that time I was paying 14.79 pence for electricity and 2.44 pence per kilowatt for gas. On the 1st of July 2021, they put the gas price up by 36%, taking it to 3.32 pence per kilowatt. And then on the 1st of October 2021, so literally a few months later, they put electricity up by 41% and gas by a further 22%. So the prices went to 20.87 pence for electricity and 4.05 pence per kilowatt for gas. Then, again on the 1st of April, British Gas increased their prices again. So electricity went up a further 40% and gas went up a whopping 81%. So the relevant numbers now, I'm looking at the blue box on the screen. For the 1st to the 7th of April 2022, we were paying 29.24 pence per kilowatt for electricity and 7.34 pence per kilowatt for gas. Okay, and then when I switched to Octopus Energy on the 8th of April, there was a slight adjustment in the price. So electricity has gone up by a further 5 pence. So the daytime rate has gone to 30.83 pence per kilowatt. But we also have this off-peak rate now at 7.50 pence per kilowatt. So it means for those 4 hours, we're saving loads of money. We're paying less than a quarter, somewhere between a quarter and a fifth of the normal rate. And in our house, we draw, I'd probably say about 2 kilowatts in those hours. So the savings that we make on those 2 kilowatts easily offsets the additional 5% I'm paying on the Octopus tariff versus being on the British Gas tariff. In terms of gas, the price basically stayed the same. Octopus Energy rounded their number at 7.34, whereas British Gas was 7.3437. So it's a tiny little change. Okay, so because we changed provider partway through the month, I calculated the savings that were coming from each. So basically, on the first 7 days of April, we diverted 8.8 kilowatts of solar surplus into the eddy, which was basically replacing gas usage for our hot water. So that saved me 65 pence on gas that I would have otherwise had to buy. From an electricity point of view, all of the solar that was consumed, so I stress the word consumed, which means it's the solar which was produced minus what we exported and minus what we sent over to the eddy, from that at 29.24 pence, we had already saved £32 and 8 pence in the first 7 days. If I repeat those same calculations for the second half of the month, we diverted 95.2 kilowatts to the eddy at the new unit rate of 7.34, which comes to £6.99 saved, versus if I was buying that gas. And electricity, we consumed 413 kilowatts at 30.83 pence, which is what the price would have been if I bought it. That's a saving of £127.36 for the remainder of April. So the key message here is between July 2020 and now, so April 2022, the cost of gas has gone up 300% and the cost of electricity has gone up 200%. If you compare basically I'm comparing the price in the light grey box at the very top in small writing to the price in the pink box at the very bottom. So that's just an idea of how much prices are rising, how much the current war is affecting energy price, and that gives you a crystal clear perspective of the value that a solar and battery system and an eddy could potentially bring you. The forecast here in the UK is that come the 1st of October 2022, they are likely to put the prices up again. So the price cap will increase. Now, in my case, the electricity tariff is fixed for 12 months because I'm an Octopus Go, but my gas tariff is flexible. It was significantly expensive to fix it, so I remained on the flexible tariff. So it means that I am subject to the price cap change in October. So this is going to go up even more. Right, let's get into it. So the next slide, usual kind of metrics that you're used to on performance. Because I've got more charts, I've tried to simplify this. So let's take a look on the left-hand side. The solar array produced 681.1 kilowatts across the entire month of April. Of that, we exported 54.3 kilowatts to the grid. So this is basically solar surplus that I didn't have a way to consume. Then at other times during the month when I didn't have solar and I didn't have enough power in the battery, we ended up importing a total of 61.3 kilowatts into the house. So overall, the house consumed 688 kilowatts for all the various things that it was using. If you look across the chart on the bottom half of that picture, the idea here is to have no grey segments either on the top or the bottom of these bars. That would be the perfect scenario. So you can see the first week of April, on all of the days we had a grey chunk. So there wasn't enough solar production, it was pretty gloomy. And so whilst we were generating something, we had to pull the remainder from the grid. As we got to about the 7th of April onwards and for the rest of the month, pretty much every day has only a tiny sliver of grey, meaning that all of our electricity consumption was being produced by the solar array. Looking at the bottom half of that graph, the orange bars, you can see that on many days there are tiny grey segments on the bottom. So despite consuming the solar and putting it in the battery and charging up the car and using the eddy, we still had more surplus solar and we ended up sending it back to the grid. Octopus still haven't activated our SEG tariff. It's now been over 2 months since I applied. So anything that is going back to the grid, the 54.3 kilowatts, went back for free. I didn't get paid for it. So the interesting thing on this chart is for the month of April, so we're not even into peak summer yet, we basically broke even. We were producing enough solar to service our entire need. If you look at the statistics, a net 7 kilowatts was imported out of the entire month when we're consuming 688. The problem we've got is the timing of when we're consuming this, right? There's times where we have so much surplus solar that we have nowhere to put it and we can't store it. And then there's other times where we don't have enough solar and we're having to draw from the grid because our battery is empty and all that kind of stuff. So this is another example why in our situation, we need an even bigger battery to capture more of this surplus to try and minimize what we're having to import. So to kind of put it in perspective, Octopus charge us 30 pence or whatever per kilowatt to import. So I've paid 30 pence times 61 kilowatts, so that is roughly 20 pounds. At the same time, I've exported 54 kilowatts. Currently, they're paying me nothing for that, but when they finally get it activated, they should be paying me 4.3 pence. So basically, for exporting 54 kilowatts, I think that means I'll receive £2.50. So they're roughly £2.50. So they're charging me £20 for 61 kilowatts, and I'd receive back only £2.50 for 54 kilowatts, almost the same number going back to them. So you can see here that the maths here show you that there is no value in exporting your surplus energy to the grid. You want to size your solar array to meet your needs, but don't go over the top thinking that you're going to make tons of money by selling it back to the grid. They pay you such a trivial amount that it will take you a very long time to accomplish any kind of payback. There are other things that you can do, like get a Tesla Powerwall 2 and they'll pay you a bit more money to make it more cost effective. There's a few bits and pieces like that, but if you kind of look in the details of a Tesla Powerwall 2, it still doesn't work out. Okay, on the right hand side of this picture then, there's the key number, energy independence 91%. Okay, so that's the bit where it's telling us how much we survived on our own without needing to draw power from the grid. You can see that the 681 kilowatts produced is the equivalent of £239 worth of electricity based on the new Octopus rate. So if we had to buy this much electricity just for 1 month, it would have cost us £239. And finally on this page, the chart on the right hand side, it shows you the production per panel in my solar array. So the top half of the chart is the front of my house facing east, and the bottom half is the west of my house is the back of my house facing west. So you can see that the panels on the front are doing really, really well, and even the couple of panels which have shading from my neighbour's dormer for most of the day are still contributing, and it all adds up in the end. So let's move on to talk about the best and the worst days during the month of April. So first of all, the best day was the 21st of April. Not only for the month, but the entire life that I've had the solar array. We produced 33.1 kilowatts. That's the most we've ever produced. And if you look at that chart on the left-hand side, the battery was charged up from the night before, and it serviced us all the way through the night. And then when the sun came up at just after 6 a.m., it started topping up the battery again. Towards the end of the day, just after 6 p.m., about 7 p.m, when the sun tails off, you can see that our battery was fully charged, and it pretty much serviced all of our demand all the way through to midnight and into the next day. There's a tiny blip there around 8 p.m, and I think that's because we were pulling more than 3 kilowatts at the same time from a house. We probably had the oven on and a kettle burning at the same time. So that's why there's a tiny draw from the grid, because our Give Energy battery and inverter can only discharge at a maximum of 3 kilowatts. So that's a bit of a limitation. If I talk about the worst day, that was the 4th of April. We only produced 5.8 kilowatts in total throughout the whole day. Just to put that in perspective, in the month of December, 5.8 kilowatts was a good day. Sometimes we're only producing 1 or 2 kilowatts. So in the month of April, that was our worst day. The battery was charged from the day before and got us until around 4 a.m, but then it ran out and we had to start pulling power from the grid until we got to about 8 or 9 a.m, where there was a tiny amount of solar, but not enough to get us to break even. It took until about lunchtime before it was producing enough solar just to manage our kind of standby demand, but it wasn't producing excess so that we could charge up the battery. So what that meant is when we got to about 6 o'clock, when the sun went down, the battery was already empty, and whatever power we then wanted for the rest of the evening was being consumed directly from the grid. Okay, so that's what these two charts show. The best day was 98% and the worst day was 37% independence. So just coming back to the best day, even though it says 98%, there's always imperfections because the Give Energy system always seems to trickle a tiny amount of energy from the grid into the house and across the entire 24-hour period, that adds up to like 0.1 or 0.2 kilowatts in the perfect case. On this particular day, because we had that blip at around 9 p.m. or just before, where we must have been pulling high demand, those extra, fractions of a kilowatt added up to 0.6, and that's why the number is 98%. At this point, I just want to say thank you for, if you're still watching and finding this interesting. It really helps me if you hit that like button, if you subscribe. It just means that this gets in front of more people via YouTube's algorithm. We're close to hitting 100 subscribers, so it would really help if you're interested just to hit that button and get me to 100. That would be a nice milestone. All right, let's move on. So a familiar chart, our household electricity consumption. So all the numbers on this page are in kilowatts. And what I'm trying to show you is what our demand is trending like. So just to recap, the data here starts from August 2020. The blue portion of the bar is the main half of our house. The red portion of the bar is the second electricity supply that we have coming into our property. So I've stacked them here so you can see what our trend is in total. Then in October 2020, I had these electricity supplies combined into one. So I've eliminated the red bar. And then from October 2021, I had the electricity supplies combined. Then from November 2021, that's when we had our solar array installed. And so we've now got these green segments on the bar showing you how much solar production happened in that particular month. Then from January, we got an EV. So we were now consuming electricity that we had never ever consumed before to go into a car. So the red segments on the bar are showing you how many new kilowatts that we're pulling, which is specific for the car. The orange segments on the bar are also new kilowatts that we're consuming going into the eddy to heat our hot water, because we would have otherwise done this as gas. So I'm trying to show you what is new electricity demand in our house, because we're shifting petrol or diesel that we would be buying into kilowatts, and we're shifting gas that we would be buying into electricity. And finally, the bottom half, these are the grey segments. This is the export that's going back to the grid, and currently we're not getting paid for anything. So the key message here is if you look at April 2021, we consumed 519 kilowatts. If you look at April 2022 and you add the blue and the green segments together, I believe that number is 530 kilowatts. So our year on year for the same month, our electricity consumption in the household is about the same. It's increased because we've pumped 104 plus 53 kilowatts of new electricity into our house. So this is what's going in the eddy and the EV. And then we've got that tiny export. So in my view, our household energy consumption is staying consistent. So what you can see here is if you just compare the green and the blue bars, that's the 91%. That's the headline of this month's video, right? Our solar production is pretty much eliminating all of our historical electricity consumption that would otherwise pull from the grid. So looking at the kind of metrics highlighted across the top of this chart, 1.3 or 1.4 megawatts has been produced by this solar array, 1,378 kilowatts, since we had it installed back in November. That same metric, but just for 2022, we've currently consumed 1,191 kilowatts. So again, I want to highlight the word consumption because this is production minus export. It's what we actually used, right? The stuff that we made but we couldn't use, I'm not including in these metrics. So we've consumed 1,191 kilowatts. We've given back for free at the moment 137 kilowatts. In total, we've put 146 kilowatts into the eddy. So this is otherwise gas that we'd be buying. And we've put 101 kilowatts into the car. Now, what I chose to do is build the same chart, but for the gas consumption. And the reason being now is because we've got the eddy and we are diverting solar to heat the water rather than using gas, I wanted to start tracking how this affects the amount of kilowatts of gas that we're consuming. So again, I've got the data starting all the way back in 2020, and you can only see for the month of April, there's a tiny orange segment now, which represents the 146 kilowatts that we put into the eddy. If you're watching this video, you probably understand that gas uses a lot of kilowatts, or the numbers are really high compared to electricity, because gas is normally sold to you in meters cubed and then it's converted into electricity with some weird calculation. So if you've used 1 meter cubed of gas, you're probably using, I don't know, like 50, 60 kilowatts of gas equivalent. So that's why the numbers are really high. But if I do a like-for-like comparison, in April 2021, our houses combined used 3,449 kilowatts of gas. In the month of April, we used 2,656, and that's including what we diverted. So our gas consumption for the month of April is significantly lower than the year before. I can't explain why that is. We basically have 2 boilers which run our central heating and our hot water systems, and we have 2 gas cookers. So I can only put this down to this year April was warmer than last year, or I can put it down to just our usage is a bit different. I don't know, but let's see how it goes. I'm going to keep this chart going. The aim of the game is to try and get the orange segment to grow and replace the blue and the red segments. Now we still have 2 separate incoming gas supplies, so the blue and the red segments will continue to exist, but let's see how much of that we can actually replace. As a percentage then, the 146 kilowatts that we put into the gas, that we use to replace purchases of gas, equates to 3.92% of our monthly demand was basically done for free through solar. That's on top of all the electricity stuff I talked about before. Okay, let's keep moving on. So I thought about what new metrics I could bring you to keep this interesting. And one thing that came to mind is when we were considering getting solar, all the companies that I approached provided me an estimate to say, okay, if you get this solar array, this is how much power it's going to consume, and therefore your payback period is going to be whatever. So what I wanted to start tracking is what's going on in reality versus what the installers said would happen. So first of all, let's look at the metrics on the left. What I'm doing is the green bar is how much solar power the house consumed. The blue segment on top is the difference to what we produced. Okay, so in the month of November, we consumed 96% of what we produced. In December, we consumed 99% of what we produced. So on and so on. In the month of April, we consumed 92% of what we used. Now this should match up with the 91% headline, but in all the numbers I've used, there's obviously some rounding somewhere, and this has gone the other way. I did have to kind of manually write down a lot of data to build some of these charts because I can't extract the data that I want. I can't get at the right granularity, so it's lost in the rounding somewhere over there. But basically I'm tracking here how much are we consuming versus how much are we producing. So the blue segments is what we're kind of giving away for free or just not able to use because we haven't got enough battery storage or anything to consume all the power. On the right hand side, what I've done is I have put a horizontal line which shows what the installer forecasted that this solar array would produce across a 12-month period. Now, because we installed it in November, just to make the calculations easy, I'm calling the 12-month period January to December 2022. It doesn't make much difference in the grand scheme of things. So the installer thought that this entire array would produce 4,916 kilowatts across that 12-month period. And for some reason, their calculations used the fact that I would only be able to consume 50% of all of this solar production. I mean, I've always wanted a battery from day one, so I'm not sure why they went with 50%. But anyway, they think that this system would consume 2,458 kilowatts during the course of this year. Now, if you look at the area chart on the bottom right-hand side on this slide, you can see that the green shaded area is what we are consuming. So we are well on our way to hitting that green line, which is break even, which is meeting the installer's expectation. The blue bit, which you see kind of slightly behind the green shaded area, is how much we're producing. And you can see the horizontal line at the top of that portion of the slide. We've got a long way to go before we hit the 4,916 kilowatts produced in this 12-month period. So this is quite interesting because I personally think that these forecasts that the installers give you are just a load of nonsense. That they kind of feel that they're giving you something because they're showing you loads of data and metrics, but I don't really think they put too much effort into making it accurate. That certainly is definitely the case for what the installer thinks I'm going to be consuming. Let's see what it is on production. I think their number for production is about right, as it happens. I think we're going to do a lot of catching up over the next 2 or 3 months to get close to that number. And then in September and October, the production is going to reduce. So I think we'll kind of just about hit that blue line. If I talk about the metrics at the top, so what have we consumed in the house versus what did the installer estimate? So what is the ratio between that shaded green section on the bottom right chart versus the horizontal green line? So today we have consumed 1,607 kilowatts out of the 2,458 kilowatts the installer thinks I'll do in a 12-month period. So that means I have consumed 65% of what they think already. So I'm 65% of the way there to hitting their target. And I've still got 6 months to go. The metric on the right-hand side, so what have I produced versus what the installer forecasts I will produce. So we've produced 1,744 kilowatts out of their target of 4,916. So we're currently 35% of the way there. So we're 6 months in and we're only 35% of the way there. So we're behind a linear average here, but I'm hoping we have a good summer. The next 2 or 3 months should generate loads of solar and we should make big strides into that number and get us closer to target. But okay, let's keep going. I hope you found this chart interesting. I personally think it's a good way of validating what the installers say. All of the different charts they gave me projected a payback period for this entire system of about 18 years. By my own calculations, before the price rises, I thought that we can pull this off between 8 and 11 years. And with these price rises that have kicked in, I mean, that's reducing significantly. So let's see what these kind of estimates are showing at the end of a 12-month period, because that will start to give us a good idea. Just for your information, the installer discounts the production and the consumption by a few percent. I think it was 1% for every year. So while they say that I'll produce 4,916 kilowatts in year 1, it's like 4,850 kilowatts in year 2. There's no, I mean, they're just accounting for the system degrading, the solar panels not being as perfect as they were when they were new, and applying a linear discount every single year. So, I mean, it's true the system won't be as efficient, but whether that 1% discount or whatever they've used is accurate, who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Okay, moving on. So I created a chart which is called peak power, and I wanted to explain what this is. So if you go back to my video, which I've made on the top 9 questions when getting solar, one of the questions in there is, how big of a solar array do I need? I'm not going to go into the calculations of how big an array do you need, but what you come out of there is that your roof space has only got space for 10 panels, and that means your solar array is 4 kilowatts. Or your house uses this much power and therefore you need this many panels, assuming you have loads of space on your roof. So the long and the short is, with the 19 Trina panels that I've got on my roof at 385 watts each, that means my entire system is capable of producing 7.315 kilowatts at any one moment. Okay, so 7,315 watts, and that all that calculation is 19 times 385. Now, because my array faces half east and half west, the sun is never going to be pointing at all the panels in the most perfect angle at the same time. So this chart shows you the max that was achieved by the panels on every single day since we've had the installation. And I've just averaged it. So my system is capable of producing 7.315 kilowatts. In the month of November, when we got this installed, on the best day, the peak power was only 1.3 kilowatts. So the sun's low in the sky, it's only pointing at half the panels, the other ones are barely doing anything. And at the brightest moment on that best day, the most power was 1.3 kilowatts. And this is measured in 15-minute segments because all this data comes out of the Enphase system. Going across to December, the same metric, the best day peak power was 0.8 kilowatts. Right, it's really bad. You can see the rest of the metrics, and each bar represents a day. As we get to April, our average was 3.6 kilowatts, but you can see there's quite a few days which are topping out at 4 kilowatts. Now, if you take 7.3 divided by 2, that's about 3.6 and a half, 3.65, something like that. That's roughly the best that you're going to get. So if we're averaging 3.6, that means that our panels are working at their most optimal for half the day each. But we're going to creep a little bit past that because the panels which are on the other side of the house are still catching a little bit of sunlight, and it all adds up together. So I'm just creating this chart just to see what happens. I'm interested to know how close we get to this system max of 7.3. Like I said in that earlier video, just because you have a system capable of doing 7.3 kilowatts, you're not going to achieve it. And I had guesstimated that if you have a south-facing array, you'll average about 75% of your system max at best. If you have an east-west facing array, you'll average at about 50%. And if you have a north-facing array, I mean, it's not worth having a north-facing array, but if you do get one, then you're going to average at around 10%. I watched a few videos and so on, but I kind of made up that calculation. But if you look at these metrics, in the month of April, we're already at averaging 3.6 kilowatts. So that's exactly half of our system max. So my guesstimations are on par. But let's see what happens as we progress into the summer months and see if we can kind of get closer to 5 maybe. But hopefully you get the message from this video that if your house requires 4 kilowatts of power, then you need to basically consider oversizing your system because your solar panels will never be that efficient. There's always going to be some sort of discounting factor. You may have trees which cast a shadow. You may not have your house pointing in the most optimal direction. You may have other shadows, things like that. And the system is going to degrade over time. So you want to keep this going on your roof for 20, 25 years. You need to have a bit of extra capacity now. So when it's near the end of its life, you can still stretch it out if you want to. Okay, moving on. I basically did the same chart again, but instead monitoring the daily energy independence. So if you remember, the energy independence calculation is how much solar power did I consume versus how much did my house consume in total, and the difference being what we're pulling from the grid. So the higher this percentage number, the more independent you are from the grid. So again, there's no target for this, right? We're aiming for 100%, but you can see on a daily basis what kind of energy independence we're accomplishing. And the key messages here are late January, February, through March, through April. As we're getting some really good days, we're getting loads of green bars on this chart and we're getting really high numbers. You can see for April that we've averaged 90%, and that's really only being pulled down by that first week where the numbers were quite low. The rest of April, we're up there averaging 98, 99% on most of the days. So this is really, really good. This number across the entire lifetime of our solar array is 44%. So far in 6 months, 44% of all of the electrical energy that we would be consuming has been provided for free. And keep in mind that this is weighted by the worst months in a 12-month period. So I'm expecting as we get some nice summer months that percentage figure is going to improve leaps and bounds. My guesstimate is across a 12-month period, we're going to end up at around 65, maybe 70% at best. That's my guesstimate. Okay, moving forward, the payback curve. So we have saved a chunk of money this month, but this chart is not looking interesting at all. So I was trying to figure out a way to replace it. I was thinking of just bringing a table so you can see how all these numbers are evolving month on month, but I didn't do it in the end. If you have ideas of what would make this more interesting, just drop me a comment, because I really want to get rid of this, but I can't think what to replace it with. So let me run you through the numbers that you see on this page. We haven't made any new capital investments, so the number stays the same. It is a bit of a lie. I did change the thermostat for the kind of smaller portion of our house and replace it with a smart thermostat. So it wasn't expensive. I'm still scratching my head whether that's part of our entire solar kind of project or if that's just a separate thing. I installed it because it's really going to help us reduce our gas consumption by being smart and not turning the heaters on when the house is at temperature anyway, all that kind of stuff. That was the idea, and I expect with the current gas prices that we'll repay ourselves for the cost of that system pretty quick. I chose to go with a Tado system because I like to have smart things and apps. I did record what I did for installation, but it turned out to look like such a boring video I haven't posted it. But if you're interested in me kind of giving you some sort of overview of the Tado system and how it works, and maybe like a sped up fast forward version of the install, then again leave me a comment and I'll put that video together. But let's run through the numbers then over here. So the capex, I've left it the same. I haven't included Tado yet. I'm thinking about that one. Our electricity numbers, if I tie it back to that very first slide about the energy prices, 109 kilowatts was at 29 pence, so that's a £32 saving. 413 kilowatts was at 30 pence, and that's a £127 saving. I did actually check, although we're on Octopus Go, none of the kilowatts that we purchased from the grid in the month of April were purchased during those overnight hours where we would have got a cheaper rate. So the saving is basically the same. I did think about that. So total lifetime savings from the solar panels is currently £374 and 2 pence. 104 kilowatts was diverted into the eddy, so that saved us £7 and 63 pence. That gives us a lifetime total of £9.33. The number's low because I only installed the eddy in the month before. From a fuel saving point of view, it's now on £39. So this has increased because I have been charging the electric car to the tune of £39 worth. I haven't made a subtraction for the cost of electricity, which I had done in previous months. Now I thought about this. In the previous month, we weren't producing enough solar, so the electricity we put into the car was purchased from the grid, so we paid for it. But in the last month, while I've been charging the car, every single drop of electricity that went into it was solar surplus. I only charged the car if we had solar surplus. So that electricity wouldn't have cost me anything. So I haven't made a deduction. So basically I'm banking all the money. So that takes me, so I've basically saved £39 worth of diesel by putting all of this electricity into the car at no cost. So that means my lifetime solar savings are now at £70 and 43 pence. And you add up all these numbers together, since we've had the entire solar project, we have saved £442. So if I take the 442, subtract it from the capex, that means I've got a balance of 17,577 still to pay off to break even with this project. As a percentage, the 442 is 2.46% of the 18 grand. The last two boxes on the top right then, so I've had the solar panels for 5 months and 23 days when I took the screenshot a few days ago, and this is forecasting that the payback is 19 years and 4 months. Now that might seem like miles away and it's going to put all of you off, but let me say that if you go back to last month's video, the forecast was 30 years. So the solar production from this year has lopped 11 years off the forecast. And remember, my forecast is linear. I haven't done any kind of complicated calculation which takes seasonality into account. This is a straight line projection, and the beginning of my straight line was the worst 3 months that you can have in a year, the winter months. So I still want it to kind of get closer to the number I'm expecting, which was 8 to 11 years. But I'm still optimistic that as we go through the next few months where we're going to have hopefully good sunshine, we're going to lop loads more years off that forecast. So like I said, if you've got ideas of what to replace the chart with, then let me know. I'm going to keep the metrics, but I might replace the chart and just bring that in on an annual basis rather than every month, because it really doesn't look very exciting. Okay, and then the last thing to ask you is, what other analytics would you like to see? I tried to kind of think of, whatever I could invent with the data that I've got, and this is as far as I managed to go. Now, I haven't yet figured out how to connect to the APIs for Give Energy and Enphase, where I can then download all sorts of different data. That integration is not as simple as it seems. So I might be able to come up with some more calculations. But if you've got something that you've got in your mind, like, what would it be if you did this, or what would that metric be? Drop it in the comments, because if I have the data, or if I can create a calculation, I will include it in a future video. That's for sure. Right. Let me summarize then. So I've said a lot of stuff, and this video is slightly long. The headlines for this month then, for April: 91% of all of the energy that we consumed was independent. It came for free from the sun, and we didn't have to buy it from the grid. That has, saved us whatever that number was on the previous slide, 274 pounds, I think, in this month alone. If we were able to consume everything that we produced, so if I had a bigger battery, we would have actually been 99% energy independent, right? So how I figured that out is we purchased 61 kilowatts from the grid, we exported 54 to them, so our net import was actually only 7 kilowatts. 7 kilowatts for the whole month, and our house used 685 or something like that in the month of April. So more battery capacity would prevent us purchasing from the grid when we're currently giving it away for free. And as I said, we're waiting for 2 months plus for Octopus to activate our SEG tariff. Or if we could charge the battery at other times. So in the winter months when there's not enough surplus solar, then we could be charging it for cheap on the Octopus Go tariff. So whichever way around you look at it, an extra battery makes sense for us because we're consuming a lot of electricity. So Give Energy have made their new 9.5 kilowatt battery available for sale. So I have put an order. The battery is due to land in August timeframe, so watch this space. It does mean our capital cost is going to go up again, but we think it's worth it. As I always say, use the Audi Q4 a lot more to capture more diesel savings, especially at today's prices. The average price in my area around the month of April was £1.80 per litre of diesel. So in the UK, they charge us per litre, and it's £1.80, which is extortionate. So we have been using the Audi more and more, and we've been charging it more. So that's where we're really starting to see that we're ramping up on the savings. Not only have we got better solar production, we're charging it for free. We're using the car, and so we can put more charge back into the car. So looking forward, what other things can I be doing to help make me more energy independent? Because this game has got a bit addictive. I keep looking at all the charts and all the numbers and keep on pressing buttons to divert some power here into my eddy, divert some power here into my car, forecasting that the car needs a minimum of 1.4 kilowatts going into it to charge. So I really want the eddy to charge my hot water first before I do the car, but that means the car's charging at the end of the day. And when the sun reduces its output to less than 1.4 kilowatts, or when my solar panels are producing less than 1.4 kilowatts, the car won't charge and the eddy's not doing anything. So I've been tinkering with the settings. I keep an eye on it during the day, and I strategically tell it to charge the car and then do the eddy later on. Now, this, I guess, is a learning or a pain point with my setup. I could have got a Zappi, so all part of the My Energy ecosystem, and then the priority for all this stuff would be managed by itself by the Zappi. But because I got a Hypervolt charger, it's not part of the My Energy family, and Hypervolt need to put a minimum of 1.4 kilowatts into the car, it means I've got this situation to balance. I've been looking into Home Assistant to try and integrate all these technologies and then create some kind of smart metrics on it, but I use a Mac, and Home Assistant and programming is not designed for people with Macs. So I've had a real hard time getting a Raspberry Pi going and getting all this stuff working, because I can't set up a SSH using a Mac, because the SD card is unreadable after you've formatted it. So anyway, that's another headache. So coming back to the topic, what is my focus? It's going to be trying to now figure out ways to reduce my gas consumption. So as I said, I've changed the hot water timer by getting a Tado system, and I've changed the program to get the hot water to heat later in the evening. So I'm allowing the eddy to divert solar surplus all day long, and if it then gets to like 6 p.m. and there's still not hot water in the tank, or it's still got capacity for more, only then does the gas system kick in. But if it's already at temperature, then the hot water via gas won't turn on. So that's hopefully going to reduce my gas bill for one portion of my house. The other portion of my house still has the old dumb timer-based programmer, so we're thinking about getting another Tado for that. But according to Tado, you can't have more than one Tado in the same house on the same internet connection, otherwise it won't work. So some people have reported they've managed to get it to work, other people haven't. I'm debating whether we want to do the experiment, but that would also help us further. But the key thing is that most of our gas consumption actually goes towards central heating. So there's nothing in anything we're doing yet which diverts excess solar into central heating. And there's no easy way for me to kind of install something which would allow that to happen. So I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about what we can do. Let's see what the eddy is accomplishing. Let's see what kind of changes the Tado is achieving, and we'll go from there. So as I said, we're still waiting for the SEG tariff. It's been 2 months, and our actual switch to Octopus isn't fully completed yet. Although they say they've done it, the smart meters, again, are dumb, and they don't seem to be talking to Octopus. They did all work perfectly fine under British Gas, and they are the SMETS 2 meters, but for whatever reason, Octopus isn't getting the readings from them. We haven't moved anything. The meters are in the same place. It's the same meter. Everything's the same, but they're not receiving the readings. So we'll have to see. They may end up coming out to replace the meters with new ones. As it happens, I have a separate property which also has Octopus as the energy provider. The gas meter wasn't talking to the electricity meter, and therefore it was dumb. It wasn't able to submit its readings. And they came and replaced the gas meter, and then it just started working. So the gas meter is the same as the old one, but obviously they've updated some technology, and that seemed to have solved the problem. So this whole smart meter rollout, all those people that you see in the news complaining, saying it's a bad idea, I really think it is. There was no foresight about how the technology works. Not every single person has their gas and electricity meters located close together. If you depend on a communication module attached to your electricity meter to submit both your gas and electricity readings and make that little display that they give you work, then you needed to design something which has got enough power and enough range for it to communicate with all these devices if they're not located next to each other. Then almost the dumbest oversight was how all this technology would still work if you changed provider. In the UK, people are chopping and changing provider all the time to try and find the best prices. So I can't believe that the people who invented this scheme didn't think of that in the first place. And they've come up with these SMETS 2 meters which supposedly work. If they don't, they can go back to a central database. But you can see in my case, I had a perfectly working SMETS 2 meter, one electricity meter and 2 gas meters, and none of them at this point are communicating with Octopus. So it's been about a month now since the switch, and they're not working. So they're basically back to being dumb meters, and I have to take manual readings at the beginning of the month so Octopus knows what the heck is going on. But anyway, this has become quite a long video, so again, I hope you found it helpful. Please like, please subscribe, please tell your friends. Drop a comment if you've got questions, if I wasn't clear on something, and definitely drop comments if you have got ideas of other content I could put into these videos. I'm not earning any money from this. I'm doing this to be helpful because I found that when I was researching last year, there just wasn't enough information out there to kind of help me. And so I'm just trying to pass on the knowledge I've managed to learn and share this with those of you who are just interested in learning, or those of you who are seriously considering getting solar and getting all this kind of technology to help reduce your bills. Okay, well, that's it for now. Over and out. Catch you in the next video.